Good evening, everybody. I'm Bill English, Artistic Director at San Francisco Playhouse, and welcome to San Francisco Playhouse. We haven't been able to put up a show, so we thought we would have some events that would bring you closer to the show by looking at the people who are behind the show. And in this particular case, we're doing a series of chats with some of the greatest playwrights that I've ever worked with. And we're going to start off with, as you saw in the trailer, Mr. Aaron Loeb. We met Aaron first, I think, in about our fourth or fifth year, and we had never done a world premiere. And somebody gave me a copy of a play called First Person Shooter. And I was so knocked out by it, I had decided to present it after about the first 10 pages. And that led to, I think, a year or so later doing Abraham Lincoln's Big Gay Dance Party, which we then took to New York to the Fringe Festival. And a couple years later, Ideation, which you just saw in that very, very chilling trailer. Oh, I better turn off my cell phone. Remember, we're in the theater. We got to do that. So just really great. You've probably all heard me say this, that playwrights, I always think of playwrights as the prophets of our time. They're the people who have more sensitive antenna than the rest of us, and they can bring down information from the tumult around us and somehow condense it, codify it into a story which enables us to see ourselves reflected back to us. To me, they're the most incredibly gifted people, and of course, as an artistic director, they're the most important people to me, because they're the ones that come up with the story. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Aaron Loeb.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
Great to see you.
Yeah. I see. This is really, I said it was going to be a fireside chat, and indeed.
I really wish I should have set up my fireplace. I apologize, but I was just too busy remembering what it's like to wear a shirt.
You've gotten a little shaggier there since.
Yeah, I need a haircut pretty badly. Yeah.
Last time I saw you, but you can't go out, right?
Not go out. So my daughter is probably going to cut my hair this week. I think that's what I'm going to resort to.
Maybe we could do it on the show.
Oh yeah, that's okay. I would bring it up here. It's just
Aaron's first haircut in 10 weeks.
That's right.
Who knew his hair grew so fast?
It grows pretty fast, yeah.
So, in light of where we are, current events, and the terrible, unanticipated, unexplainable, unfathomable crisis that the entire world is in, what did you think watching that trailer?
Yeah, look, that play has sadly only become accurate. At some point I think people thought it was chilling, and at some point people thought it was maybe prescient, but now it's just simply a representation of reality. We know now teams at McKinsey who are making these kinds of plans, right? And we know now that there's teams right now at McKinsey working with the state of New York, trying to figure out how to get the world back open after this pandemic, right? I mean, it's just actually a thing. It's actually just a chronicle of the real world.
Like the play is like I literally, my legs, I became terrified.
No. Just
watching the trailer. More so perhaps than before. But yeah, I mean, the news is saying that they think somebody, a conspiracy theory is saying that the Chinese may have lost track of a sample from their virology laboratory in Wuhan, got into the public.
Yeah, there's that. That's a good one. There's the other conspiracy theory that it's all being caused by 5G, which is the new cell signal, for the much faster cell signal. That's my favorite one, because where they get it from is you look at a map of 5G across the globe, and the hot spots of 5G, and they're also the hot spots of where the virus is spreading. But of course, they're population centers. That's why they're the hot spots. It's like,
oh my God, there's a hot spot over New York.
What?
In LA.
Yeah.
In Paris.
Where there are people, right? The disease is spreading. Like, it's stunning. Yeah. Yeah, but it's one has to laugh, right? But it is, we're going to be, we will be sorting through and dealing with conspiracy theories about this event for the rest of our lives. If you just think like, I was born after the Kennedy assassination, right? So it would seem like a thing that I would not be particularly relevant to me, but my entire life I have known about and heard about the conspiracies of the Kennedy assassination. It was something that I and friends in college would talk about. It was a source of obsession. Well, this is much bigger scale than that. I mean, this is an unparalleled event in human history. And we are going to be hearing stories about it and people making up incredible conspiracies about it for forever, for generations.
Conspiracy theories are a part of humanity's need to tell stories.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we will take facts that may be completely unrelated, and the human mind is designed to take those facts and make them into a story.
Yeah, of course.
Like the studies they did were the circle and a triangle and two lines. And people would say, well, the lines are pissed off because the triangle prefers the circle. And people would literally make a story out of a circle, a triangle, and three lines.
That's how we make sense of things, right?
Just because there are probably people watching today who did not see ideation. Can you just for just a brief second put ideation in perspective in terms of what's happening now and how you came up with the idea of the
Sure. Yeah. So Ideation is a play that takes place in a management consulting firm somewhere in the world, probably New York or San Francisco, but we never know. Where a group of consultants have been brought in to work on a top secret project, and it's very urgent. And it becomes clear maybe 10 or 15 minutes into the play, where you actually saw the trailer ends with the question, JD wants us to work from the back half and move our way forward. He then says, so let's get to disposal, or namely, what are we going to do with all the bodies? And it becomes clear very quickly that this is a group of management consultants, contemporary management consultants, working on a death camp of some kind, working on a facility where they are going to kill people and then dispose of the bodies, and do so secretly. And so we begin to think, well, maybe these people are just evil people. It's not clear what this is. And then it becomes clear that they think they're the good guys. And the reason why they believe they're designing this camp is in case there is a virus, a massive virus that hits the human race that is incredibly contagious, and that most people get it will die. And so you need to separate off the infected and hold them in these concentration camps. But of course, concentration camps, you're going to run out of resources, right? There won't be enough ventilators, et cetera, to keep these people in these concentration camps. So eventually you're going to have to clear out the concentration camps, get in new people, to make room for the new people. And that's going to require killing people, or at least disposing of their bodies. And then they start to think, well, wait a minute, maybe we're being lied to. Maybe in fact, this is not about a virus. Maybe somebody just wants us to think it's about a virus. And they begin to pursue other potential theories about who would want them to design this thing and why. And from there, wackiness ensues.
Wackiness, yeah, because it is a comedy after all.
It is a dark comedy.
Yeah. It's a play that walks the tightrope between a thriller and a comedy.
Oh.
But how did you? So talk about prophecy. The idea that playwrights are prophets. I guess you kind of nailed that one, huh?
I was saying to somebody else recently. I think I made a grave error in the writing of the play, looking back on it.
We can go back to work on it.
Yeah, we could. And it's that all of the characters in the room accept the idea that what they are doing, the idea of a concentration camp where they will kill people, is terrible, but they have to do it for the good of humanity.
Right.
But they all understand morally this is a very difficult thing they've been asked. And I feel like the lesson in the past few years is that is just not the case, that everyone in that room would feel that way. That in fact, there would have been at least one or two people in the room like, yeah, I get it. People got to die, whatever, because that's what our recent state has revealed to us, right?
Well, there was some of that. The Michael Ray Wisely character, he was pretty much willing to go with the flow, and this is our job. We got to do our job. We shouldn't question who's telling us what to do.
But he does recognize that this is a bad thing, right? And so, I would say the great lesson I've learned from the past few weeks, we had a Congress monster from Indiana, I think, who just explicitly said, look, if a bunch of people have to die, but it brings the economy back, it's probably worth it. So let them die. It's like, okay, like he's an elected representative. He said that out in the open, right? So I think that the play's belief, my belief at the time of writing it, that these things would have to be done in secret, that these things would be agreed upon as horrible things. I think we want to believe that as genteel theater goers. But I think our reality actually turns out to be more monstrous even than I had imagined. Sorry to say.
Kind of scary. When we did first person shooter, we were, if you remember, we were about a week before opening, not even. I think we were maybe just starting previews, and the Virginia Tech shootings happened right on top of the play. Yeah. And Susie and I were a little nervous. We were just a little nervous about possibly being accused of capitalizing on and yet there you were right on top of current events. Way back.
Yeah, I mean, I think we didn't. It's another example. So first person shooter is a play about a school shooting where there's some details that bear resemblance to a video game. And I make video games as well in my life. It's my day job. And the action splits between the father of one of the victims and the company that made this video game that gets blamed for the shooting. It's based on actually what happened after Columbine. And I think we had the Virginia Tech shooting, which had a lot of eerie parallels actually to our play. But I think at that time, which is 2007, we have to recognize that school shootings were still once every
couple of years,
months, a year. I don't on that scale, right? And now they've become so pedestrian that I don't know if you saw this news today. March of this year was the first month since 2002 without a school shooting, and so we've sort of become inoculated to this atrocity that's a daily visit upon our children. So I think whatever people often comment on how prescient it was of me to have written that play, but I feel like, well, all I did was point out that water is wet, right? I mean, all I did was
but the thing of it is
oxygen, that we're all breathing. Sorry, go ahead.
The thing of it is just like the progression of events that makes Ideation seem a little tame today. Yeah. Also, same progression.
Yes.
It's the school. The thing is, so you were ahead of the curve on both those things.
Yeah, unfortunately.
I think we opened Abraham Lincoln's Big Gay Dance Party a day or two after the California Supreme Court rejected Gavin Newsom's legalization of gay marriage, right? Right?
It's a different event. We opened literally right after Prop 8 passed. So Prop 8 passed and we opened. And so we were all sort of reeling from this stunning
repressive.
Yeah. Like, so here we are in liberal California, and our state has literally just voted to ban gay marriage. It was, I think we were still just shocked at the time. And you'll recall in that play, which is about the politics of gay rights, but more specifically, it's about the politics of decloseting our history, right? So if it is going to be the case that we as a people embrace the fact that being homosexual is just a part of human life, there will become a point where we have to also think about the history of homosexuality. Like, we have to incorporate homosexuality into our understanding of our history, right? And a key example of that being the strong evidence that Abraham Lincoln had a lifelong love affair with Joshua Speed. And so a teacher teaches that to her students. And of course, it's a giant controversy in her small rural Illinois town.
She becomes the enemy of the people.
She becomes the enemy of the people, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a scene in it in which an African-American congresswoman and the fabulous gay reporter from New York are arguing about essentially African-American rights versus gay rights and the divisions between their communities, right? And Prop 8, one of the things that everyone was reeling from was that it passed in large part with a strong vote from the African-American community in California, which a bunch of people were really reeling from at that moment. So it was quite charged, that scene, when we were in front of audiences.
So, Aaron Loeb, prop of our time, with your 3 kind of ringing successes on that level, what do you say to this time? What are artists? So we're all shut down. We can't do our art now. We can't. We're back in our houses, right?
Yeah.
Talking about art. But what is going to happen? What are your antenna bringing down to you?
I believe the core of the problem is commercial rather than necessarily artistic. And the problem is that those two things are so tied together in the way that we've decided to conduct ourselves as people in the United States that it's hard to see the gap between the two. The economics of getting people in a room, spending money to buy a ticket to see a thing are really, really in trouble for quite some time. But you said it yourself. You put people in front of a picture of a circle and a line and a square, and they will make up a story about it. Like the need to experience story, the need to see ourselves in story, the need to tell stories is one of the most profoundly human things there is. We must dance, we must sing, we must tell stories, we must sleep, eat, have sex, right? But these are like core human needs. And so what I know won't happen is that we'll just stop having art, right? That's just, it's clear we're going to figure out some way through. But we're going to have to invent, at least in the short term, interesting and new ways to experience story together. And my hope is that, so there'll be a bunch of really unpleasant things that are going to happen. There's going to be a bunch of things that we're going to lose. But my hope is that we'll be able to gain some new things. That we'll be able to see some ground up, grassroots, interesting ways of expressing art that people will join into. Because I don't know about everybody else, but I find myself after 5 weeks being locked inside, being desperate to be back in human company other than my family. I love my family, but I'd love to see some other people too, right? And I really miss being in the theater. I mean, this event reminds you of what is precious to you.
Yeah.
In profound ways. So my guess is we'll probably have less tolerance for bullshit. We'll probably, have some, stuff that we're just not going to be very interested in anymore, but really meaningful theater. The National Theater has been putting up every week a different play from their archives. And they put up Jane Eyre this last week. And it's a 2-camera recording of an incredible production of Jane Eyre. And there's this amazing monologue in it, profound monologue where she says, I am a spirit talking to another spirit. She's an incredible and moving performance. And my wife and I were just both weeping on our couches. And we're certainly not doing that when we're watching Lion King on Netflix, right? The connection that theater makes possible can even happen through this screen. Like the humanity of it can even happen through the screen. So we're gonna have to figure out how to do it. We're gonna figure out how to do it well.
Yeah, that's what Susie and I think every other theater leader in America and the world is trying to grapple with is, can we do this live thing on camera? I think back to like the early television days when they had the playhouses.
Yeah.
You had the 90-minute dramas written by Rod Serling and Padishevsky and many others, right? Frank Gilroy, Reginald Rose, a lot of these writers, and they were written straight through, right? They were one acts, or they were hour and a half plays, and they were done with a live audience.
Yeah,
I believe.
Yeah, they were, absolutely. Yeah.
And they often had an ensemble of actors that were in each one, like Playhouse 90. I remember the Richard Boone Theater was the last one, and it was 90 minutes. And I don't know, we're sort of thinking about maybe some sort of a hybrid where we do the 50 people, that assuming they'll let us rehearse the play. Right?
Yes.
The 50 people that we can put in our auditorium, and then an incredibly high caliber of 3-camera video that we plan from the first day.
Right.
So we're thinking about shots and angles, and we're thinking of it as a kind of a hybrid event that seems to me a little bit like early television. Early television drama.
And yet in some ways still different, because it will have probably less of a direct commercial impulse than television ultimately. I've got to write, a key part about television writing for that era, and this has obviously changed now, is that you're literally having to structure what you write to make time for the commercials, right? And so it affects what you're writing, right? And it swiftly morphed into that, what they were doing then.
You won't have to worry about that.
And we won't have to worry about that, right? And so it's really going to be, what I'm excited to see is what artists start to create that mess with form, knowing from the beginning that there's going to be a camera in the room, knowing from the beginning that there'll be people both present and distant, knowing from the beginning that people will be able to text each other, while people will be able to text somebody in the audience. The audience members will be able to text people who are watching at home, who will be able to tweet live. You've experimented with that, right? Think about all the different ways that the various communication technologies that we have enable interaction, not just with what's happening on stage, though there's a huge amount you can do with that, what's also happening with the audience in the room versus the audience who's not in the room. There's a lot of play that playfulness that an artist can make there.
There's a lot of wildness. There's room for a ton of wildness that people wouldn't see on the screen, which makes me think the story should be wilder.
Yes.
Darker, not darker necessarily, but just a little more unhinged.
Yes.
I start thinking of the Anton and Artaud and the Theater of the Plague, that great essay.
Yes.
And I reread it a while ago, and I thought, oh my God, we are now there.
Should we read that? I love Artaud.
He was talking about the theater that came out of this plague, a town in France in the 18th century, and all the reflections that he said it made theater feel like it's like the plague, in that it possesses you and takes over the actor's body, and what the does is like out of control. Like the plague is out of control. So it's an infection and an inspiration, So it seems, have you thought about actually writing? Have you thought about that? Maybe we should talk more about that, huh?
I'm working on something right now. We're rewrites for Playhouse, and I'm working on something that's fairly conventional right now, but I've also been talking to some people about different ways of working with the form and using podcasts, using theater, using video. One of the things that I'm struggling with when it comes to video is how theatricality lives through a video screen. That's a thing that seeing that air production was helpful, because there's a huge number of theatrical elements, but you still can't help but recognize you're watching a video where just something not quite right happens. What I mean by that is, for those in the audience, you know what I mean when I say theatricality, but in the theater, an actor can hold up a red ball and say, "This apple looks delicious," and the audience instantly, nobody turns to the person next to them and goes, "But it's a ball," right? Like everybody knows that ball is now an apple, right? It's the fundamental language of theater, is that we're able to do that, right? And you just cannot do that in film and television, right? Because we've trained the audience not to accept that, right? That's what they couldn't afford an Apple? Like, was it just doesn't make any sense, right? And so the ways in which we'll be liberated in some ways in being able to use technology that will maybe be, thrust us forward into this cybernetic age we live in now, where we all have computers, supercomputers in our pockets at all times. So the theater will have to, be able to be more free to interact with that reality. But what of our existing language, the language that we've relied on for thousands of years, suddenly gets broken by this new era, because some of us are relying
on this little box.
Yeah, this little box. Yeah, exactly. There's all kinds of wonderful ways you can play with it, but there's also ways that you have to learn. You have to learn the new language, and this happens with every medium. Paula Vogel says this thing, which I adore, which is that when an audience encounters a new medium or a new art form, they go through 3 phases. The first is that they're naive; they don't know any of the rules of it. So, the first time an audience sees a melodrama, they're like, "The butler did it? What?" Like, just their minds are blown, right? And then, as they see a lot of that new medium, that new form, they start to get used to it. They can become sophisticated. They start really having preferences. Like, I'm kind of sick of Butler having done it. I would like to be surprised, right? And then eventually they've seen so much of that medium that they become decadent, where they know every rule, they know every trope, they've seen it all done 1,000 times. And now the artist's job is almost to play with their expectations. You think because you heard that low piano note on the soundtrack, it means somebody's going to die, but actually it's the cat jumped out at somebody, right? You're like, if you'd never seen a scary movie before, a single low piano note playing wouldn't cause you to assume, oh, the slasher is about to kill somebody. But because we've seen so many of them, we know what that means, right? So I think if we start really making theater that is inherently requiring having some audience being distant, some audience being present, but still a live experience, we're going to be learning a whole bunch of new rules. We are all going to be naive, both the creators and the audience. So we're going to be learning together what works in this new form.
Sounds like we better get to work.
We've got a lot of work to do.
We better rethink the pitch.
Maybe we should. I mean, it's a play about technology.
I think we're going to have to be a hybrid thing.
Yeah, we could absolutely be a play. The play that we're working on right now, which is about the venture capital world, could very easily turn into this sort of hybrid.
Well, we could go on and on, couldn't we? We could make this a 3-hour show, and people would drift off and come back and say, "Are they still talking about that stuff?" But we said we were going to do a half hour, so
all right.
Maybe I just better say thank you, and we'll have to have a breakout on that way of, intersecting, video format with theater format, and whatever that's going to be.
Yeah.
Or many breakouts.
Yeah, I think we're going to need to find time and space to do some experiments. And what I know from theater audiences, including the beautiful people who are spending part of their Thursday night watching you and me jabber on, is that they're here for it. That people want to, the audience. The thing that's so wonderful about being a theater audience member is that you are part of the art. You know that you're part of making something great happen. And so this period of experimentation we're going to have to enter into to figure out how to make art in this new world is one that I think we'll have audience members helping us explore, right? And those explorations.
Right, could be very interactive. Could be.
Great. Yes, absolutely. Like, it'll be a critical part of it to get feedback. Like, did that work? Did you understand what we were doing there? Like,
yeah,
actually be part of it.
Well, Aaron, that was fantastic. That was fun.
Yeah.
The time flew by.
It did. I can't believe I was already half an hour.
I know. Well, we'll do it again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Once we get through all the other prophets, we'll come back around. We'll do it again.
Yes. Well, let me before we go, Bill, I just want to say thank you for you listed off over the years all of the many things we've done together, and I just have to say, San Francisco Playhouse has been and remains my artistic home, even though I live in LA now. it's a jewel of an institution, and that's because of your leadership and Susie's leadership. And I hope everybody watching and anybody watches this in the future who's in San Francisco knows how lucky the whole city and the whole country is to have your theater, and how supportive you are of making new work and helping chronicle our lives. And so I hope in this really difficult time that folks will remember Playhouse in their giving and in their planning and everything that they do, because our great institutions like yours need our help. And I know I will promise to continue to do my part. I will continue to donate money, not just write plays, but
Right.
I will not just write. I will also send money, because I know that that's needed too. And I just want to thank you for everything that you do. Thank you.
Well, thank you. We've had a great partnership, and I'm sure there'll be a lot more. All right.
I will.
Thank you, Aaron Loeb. Hey, everybody, I just wanted to give you a heads up. We're going to be doing this every week, every Thursday at 7 o'clock. And we have a fantastic lineup coming. Next week, we're going to meet with Lauren Gunderson on the 30th at 7 o'clock. We're going to have, the 23rd at 7 o'clock. There's our theater. And then Carrie Perloff is going to be with us. We did the Fit with Carrie on April the 30th. And on May 7th, we have Lauren Yee. Lauren Gunderson, we did a play called Bauer with Lauren. And of course, with Lauren Yee, King of the Yees. And In a Word, we did 2 shows with Lauren. And then the Laurens have since become kind of national stars. Their shows are done. Lauren Gunderson is the most produced playwright in America, I believe, at this time. So we hope that you all will tune in to our fireside chats with the prophets of our time. And I also wanted to encourage you to consider, this beautiful graphic that our marketing director, Donnie, put together. These are all the people who've donated to we call it our kind of a COVID fund once we got shut down. All these people, and there are hundreds and hundreds of them, have donated to kind of keep the theater alive and help us pay the rent and help us keep our staff working through this time. And we're hoping that those of you who are able will continue to join this group of our heroes that are actually keeping us going. So please tune in next week. It should be exciting. Lauren Gunderson is a great speaker. She's almost as eloquent as Aaron Loeb. And I'm sure she'll have a lot of exciting and fascinating things to think about the future of theater in our time. What you're seeing now, of course, is our season, our next year's season. 5 great plays with 1 mystery play to be picked. So many people, I'm amazed how many people, even given the insecurity of our time, have already subscribed to this new season. So please come see me next week. We'll have another wonderful chat with Lauren Gunderson. And until then, have a great evening. Be safe. Be well.